No, I'm not presenting this in Super Marionation. Despite the teaser image, this is in fact my top 5 phones for November 2013, exactly 6 months after my previous top 5 picks. As usual, I have to exclude the Nokia 808 filming this, but do see my ultra geek adventures with custom firmware. The HTC One, number 1 in May, is out here because I'm losing all confidence in HTC. Having had a disastrous year financially, what HTC should have done was stick with the One and then perhaps improve it internally, for example, with a better camera. What it actually chose to do was cripple the One and both shrink it and enlarge it. In the One Mini and the unibody, but not really, One Max. Neither are anywhere near being compelling products, and I can't help but feel the company keeps shooting itself in the foot. The LG G2 seemed like a sexy new call, but the limited 16 gig of internal storage with no expansion, the sealed battery, and the slightly odd button arrangement just edge it out of my 5. Finally, the Samsung Galaxy Notes are an odd phenomenon, not because of the size, but because they're ever more stylus-centric, which I don't like. And because in some ways the Note 2 is better than the Note 3, which makes no sense whatsoever. At number 5 is my traditional oddball value pick. I'm throwing in the Samsung Galaxy Mega 6.3. At only 70% the cost of an S4 and 60% the cost of a Galaxy Note 3, there's an even bigger screen and a whopping big battery. If you don't absolutely need the fastest processor, the highest resolution screen, the best camera or a stylus, the Mega 6.3 gives you almost all the top-end Android goodness and more, and up to 1.3 inches more, of course, with huge cost savings. At number 4, I'd have to go with the aforementioned Galaxy S4, though. It was too expensive for my May top 5, but it has come down over £100 since then, SIM-free, and it's now a better bet than the older S3, with higher resolution screen, much better camera and speaker, faster processor, and so on. Just remember to allow for a meaty micro SD card. You'll need it to expand the surprisingly meagre available internal storage. At number 3, the 41 megapixel censored oversampling camera with usable lossless zoom and genuine xenon flash. No, not the Nokia 808 again, but it's Windows Phone 8 powered successor, the Lumia 1020. I'm just drawn to it. And for even normobs, they'll take better photos of more and more subjects, even moving in low light, and have more fun with this side of things than with any other phone. With Nokia's name on it, the build quality here is astonishing. The screen stunningly clear in all light conditions, and the OS itself, well, it's at least modern and future-proof. So what if there's no app for your bank or local store? There are still plenty of other commercial and free apps to draw on. As for the iPhone, there's my pet hate of a sealed battery and sealed storage, but the former gets me through a day and the latter is 32 gig, and overall, the pros definitely win out at the end of the day. At number 2, there's no getting round this, the Apple iPhone 5S. Supremely expensive. The 5S starts at around the cost of a Galaxy Note 3, and the 64 gig version is over £700 here in the UK. Patently ridiculous for something so small and relatively fragile, but there's no arguing with Apple's it just works way of connecting all the dots. iOS 7 is a big step up in terms of UI. I'm loving the multitasking view and the swipe up control center, and even the garish new icons can't take away my admiration for what is a stunning piece of microelectronics with outrageous 64-bit horsepower in such a tiny diminutive form factor. The fingerprint unlock system is a masterstroke and really well implemented, and if you can't afford it, well, fast forward to the end of this video. But at number 1, I suppose this was inevitable. Yes, there's always a temptation to vote up the latest and shiniest toys, but in this case we have a genuine landmark Android smartphone with cutting edge everything at a budget price, and I don't think many of you will argue with my pick. The Google Nexus 5 here, made by LG, this is the 32 gig white version, at least on its back, is the culmination of 2 years of progress by Google. The Galaxy Nexus was a standout at the end of 2011 with Ice Cream Sandwich. The Nexus 4 was something of a meh device, with its OS version also reaching the Galaxy Nexus. But the 5 here introduces a whole new generation of the OS, partly in terms of UI tweaks, but mainly because of what's under Android's hood. And I'll come to this in a moment. The Nexus 5 itself is beautifully made. It's plastic, but very solidly constructed and with no creaks, unlike the G2. The display is up with the G2 as being one of the best LCD screens I've ever used. It's 1080p and super high res and is readable in all but the most direct sunlight. The speaker is the same as the G2's mono, despite the twin grills, and decent quality though not very loud. Here's a demo. This is full volume. Think Nexus full volume, but better fidelity, I think. In fact, a lot of what applied to the LG G2 can be applied here. The camera, which has a slightly recessed protective ring, has the same OIS, meaning super smooth 1080p video capture and sharper low light shots of static subjects. Only LED flash, but hey. Here are some sample photos in a variety of light conditions. I was impressed. A built-in HDR Plus mode works as well as on the iPhone, which is a big compliment. It's windy, it's cold, I want to get back indoors. This is 1080p sample footage on the Nexus 5. See what you think. Happily, the LG's experimental rear button cluster has gone in favour of more traditional side button placings, and I for one am very happy about this. The white rear here isn't Samsung-style gloss plastic, but a rather lovely matte effect, deliberately slightly off-white out of the box so that day-to-day use doesn't dull the finish too much. The 2300 mAh lithium polymer battery is sealed here, as is the modern way, sigh, but I'm going to forgive it because there's full Qi wireless charging, meaning that keeping the Nexus 5 topped up is as simple as keeping it on my Nokia Qi charging pad whenever I'm at my desk. Storage is sealed too at 32 gig on this model, of which about 27 gigabytes are free out of the box. That's enough for me. The lack of micro SD isn't for once a complete showstopper, but don't go for the 16 gig version unless you're prepared to stream most of your media. Under the hood, this is the very latest version of stock Android 4.4 Kitkat. The launcher has been tweaked to bring Google Now further into the user's eye line with just a swipe from the left, duplicating the existing swipe up from anywhere. There's also as many screens as you care to add. They get added as you try and drop content off to the right, though there's no wrapping Samsung style. It's strictly a left-right home screen panorama. The SMS messaging app is now gone, replaced rather unintuitively by Hangouts, which now includes SMS support. Is it just me, or is Google losing its way in this aspect? I suspect I'll have to live with this for a while to get used to it. Included now as standard is the full Quick Office editing suite which Google bought, plus extra cloud integration and extensive printing support to any network or cloud HP compatible or cloud print device. And Bluetooth support has been improved yet again with far better compatibility with car kits and Bluetooth speakers. Under Android 4.3, the OS took about 600 megabytes of RAM, causing 1 gig devices to be slightly compromised for power users, with apps closing when you really wanted them to stay open. Google claims this figure has been reduced to about 300 megabytes, i.e. half the RAM footprint, though in my tests it was more like 450. Still, this should significantly improve multitasking on some devices. The Nexus 5 here has 2 gig of RAM, so you start off with about 1.5 gig free after booting. Luxury. It all adds up to a major update for Android. If you were underwhelmed by 4.3, and hey, even Google didn't bother to update the name, or by the Nexus 4's hardware, rest assured that the combination of 4.4 Kitkat and the Nexus 5 is at last a big enough step forwards that we can leave behind the Galaxy Nexus, which is just as well, because the latter's TI chipset means that 4.4 won't run officially on it. Though I bet hackers find a way to recompile it somehow. I'll report on that in a future show. So much is familiar here that I appreciate it's hard to get too excited, but the Nexus 5 does bring Google's flagship line right up to date and in some style. Essentially, it has reset the clock so that we can now look forward to another couple of years of surfing the crest of Android evolution without fear of being left behind. And in the process, it's produced a smartphone that's almost flawless and fully capable of being used day to day without feeling like a compromise has been made. And all of this at an outrageous price, about £339, including sales taxes, SIM-free in the UK for the 32 gig version here. A price that will make the Samsung and HTC dealers across the world weep in their socks. This is the Google Nexus 5, my number one pick. I've said on podcasts for the last year and a half that I prefer this, the iPhone 4S, to the 5. And even though I picked the 5S just now, I still feel drawn to the 4S. For someone on a budget, it's a powerful iOS 7 and Siri running pocket computer in an arguably much more durable steel chassis rather than chippable aluminium. But if you buy the 4S these days, it's going to be a couple of years old on average, which means that a full charge of its sealed battery will be down to as little as 60% of the original capacity. The solution is to replace the battery, of course, and put a new unit in. Apple will do it for £50 or so in an Apple store, which is fair enough, but it's quite a lot when you've just bought a budget second-hand iPhone 4S for under £200 SIM-free. I was determined to try DIY replacement. Now, Apple iPodParts.com, no connection to me by the way, seemed to offer official iPhone batteries at around £20, and eBay supplied the necessary pentalobe screwdriver kit for £1 extra. 2 pentalobe screws out from the bottom and the iPhone's back slides off easily. The power connector is held on by 2 tiny, and I mean tiny, screws. With my eyesight, getting these back on again wasn't that trivial. The battery itself lifts out easily, and the only extra thing of note is a very un-Apple-like kludge of a loose shielding widget that has to be screwed on underneath the connector so that its contact also makes an electrical contact to the back cover. Total time taken was about 10 minutes, but I think someone with 20/20 vision could probably do it in 2. The end result, a steel iPhone with excellent camera and speaker, brand new battery, and more or less the full run of iOS 7 to play with and enjoy. £221 all in. Job well done, if I say so myself.